We are back. It is a Tuesday here, January 13th, and we're back into kind of that 1 week cadence here from an off-season podcast. Kevin Bowen, Eddie Garrison, Colts Corner with myself, Kevin Bowen, and Eddie will probably focus primarily today on the Chris Ballard press conference. I know last week it was a little bit more Carly Ursay-Gordon centric. Chris spoke last Thursday, so we'll definitely highlight a lot of that here today. And then we'll start to get into some other stuff now as the offseason is kind of officially here. How are you doing on this Tuesday morning?
I'm great. How are you?
Good.
Can you give us your best cadence, like your best call if you're a quarterback?
Green 80, green 80. Hi.
Okay.
How was that?
It was okay. I think Gruden would appreciate it.
Is Gruden the green 80?
Well, I know Gruden loves it when the quarterbacks do the hard counts.
Oh, he loves it. He loves it.
My favorite clip is
the Andrew Luck one.
The Jackson Dart.
Oh yeah.
When he asked him, "Hey, what's your cadence?" and he goes,
The John Gruden loving a cadence and Quinn Buckner loving brickin' for chicken. Those are probably. I hope my kids can find someone in their lives that love them as much as those two individuals love those things. Again, we'll focus mostly on the Ballard thing. I know we got a couple again lingering. Podcast, Twitter questions. We'll continue to get to those throughout the offseason. So feel free to send those in. If you don't hear them for whatever reason, we're probably saving them for a future pod. Big picture, what do we got? 8 openings. We'll see about Mike Tomlin. Anything lingering on that end? What's your Super Bowl pick?
Super Bowl pick? Going into it, it was Eagles, and I believe I went Buffalo. I can't remember if I went Buffalo or not. Yeah.
That's what I went with.
Really?
Good to see we got half of it.
Yeah.
Left, I should say, not that they're going to win. I know it's kind of funny. I asked a question on our show this morning.
All season long, I had been on the Rams, and then like the way they closed the regular season, I'm like, I don't know if I could trust their defense enough to get some stops.
Like, who is the ACC? Who is the AFC team you trust the least? And I had many people saying Buffalo because of the injuries. So I'm like, wait, don't they have the best quarterback and the best running back left?
Right.
And then you watch Houston's defense last night, and you think, is that 2000 Ravens? C.J. Stroud, Trent Dilfer?
Well, it's also been, the epitome of the Pittsburgh season.
Sure.
Like they have one game like they did to win in the regular season finale against Baltimore, and then, the following week they look like doo-doo. Sure.
No, that is certainly a very good point. Okay, let's get into Chris Ballard's press conference, and I'll just start here kind of on Ballard as an individual, in that presser. And I don't know, I thought he was a little bit more subdued kind of for him. Not as wildly animated as usual, no cussing, not as feisty, not as much, cackling. And I don't really know where that maybe stems from. Obviously, on the Ballard scale of 9 years, like I said before, I don't think 2025 is the most egregious season by any means. He took blame. He was pretty candid about what needs to improve, like he usually is. He got philosophical about pain versus suffering, and when you hear him try to defend his resume, it's cringeworthy. That probably summarizes, I think, like Ballard's persona, I would say, within the press conference. There are certainly items, Eddie, that I want to get to of like what specifically he wants to address. Some of them a little bit more tangible than others, but I guess, want to start just with his, mentioning of, Carly Ursay-Gordon's conversation with him prior to the Houston game. And I was a little dumbfounded by it, to be honest with you. Basically Ballard relayed their conversation in that Carly had asked him, I believe the top question she asked him, according to Ballard, was, do you still have your juju or your shimmer to do this? And I don't really understand why that would be your top question for a resume that has so much failing elements to it 9 years into it. Like, to me, Eddie, that might be a question the Rooney family asked Mike Tomlin today. You've had a 2-decade run here. You've had a lot of success. Do you feel like whatever, you still have this, again, juju and shimmer, I guess are the words that I'll use, to do it? Or rewind a few years back. that might be what the Duke AD would have asked Mike Krzyzewski as the college basketball landscape started to change, or the Syracuse AD to Jim Boeheim, or the North Carolina AD to Roy Williams. To me, that's something you ask somebody that's very accomplished and that could be either aging or the circumstances around them are getting different. Do they still have the desire to want to do that, or the passion, I guess, to want to do that? So honestly, I walked away from that being like, oh my gosh, I always thought the Irsay family held Ballard in high regard. I think they hold him in higher regard than I even thought. Like, to me is the first question you ask him. Not, what do you think about your team again collapsing with multiple head coaches?
Yeah,
leading the way. Again, I feel like I'm rehashing all these numbers again. Okay, why haven't we won a division title under your watch? Why is there only one playoff win? Why is there just 2 playoff appearances? So on and so forth. I was frankly a little stunned by that question. I think there's maybe a bigger picture with Carly Irsay-Gordon you can get to of, as more items kind of start to fall a little bit more onto her plate or under her watch is the better way to say it. How do you kind of evaluate some things? But this would fall in the skeptical category for me of just like, really? That's the first question you have for him? So yeah, did I misread that, or did you have a similar reaction?
I had a similar reaction of like, really? This is where you're going to reveal that question was even asked like that? I feel like that would be something that I wouldn't want, being publicized. If my owner is asking me if I still have, the energy or the juju or whatever it is to continue doing my job. And like, it made me wonder, we know how emotional of a guy Chris Ballard is. And of course, Kevin, firsthand because you guys hear him up there in the press box on game days on Sundays when it's a home game for you, and the other members of the media get to experience it on the road sometimes as well. But like, is the emotional aspect of being 8-2, everything looking like it's going the right way. He looks like and feels like he finally got it right with the quarterback, and the roster is playing up to the ability that he envisioned, and then all these injuries start piling up and the collapse happens, and so that's sending him into in a bad spot mentally. And is that why Carly Irsay-Gordon had to ask the question, do you still have the juju? Like, do you still have the drive? Do you still have the energy to keep doing this when you felt like you had it and then it's just all taken away from you?
Yeah, I guess I can understand a little bit of that. My thought would be this, Eddie. If you are questioning an individual's drive, energy, passion, however you want to define it, they better have a substantial resume that rises above. And like, you have questions about Chris Ballard's resume, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you have questions there better not be any sort of question on the other part of it, on the energy, on the drive. So that's where I guess maybe the season, whatever, could have put him in that spot, but I don't know. I don't get the impression there is this crushing feeling inside of that organization for the Colts missing the playoffs again. I think it was more of a, hey, look at the first 2 months of the year. That's what we're going to bank on. That's how I've kind of observed some things. Moving on to some other Ballard topics, and feel free to chime in whenever. The one tangible thing that they will focus on here in 2026 is the defense. Younger and faster. It honestly, a lot of it is kind of sitting there with the 3 defensive ends heading for free agency: Kwity Paye, Samson Ebukam, Tyquan Lewis. Now there is a little bit of this of like Ballard's kind of cleaning up his own mess. He wanted this certain defensive system. Well, now he's realized the defensive system is not what he wanted, and they go out and they get Anarumo last year. He wanted to go from the 3-4 to kind of that 4-man front. And then personnel-wise, now it's, all these guys that I've signed and drafted and re-signed. Now it's a little bit of an aging group, a little bit of a slow group, I guess.
Let me ask you there. Where do they get younger on defense? Like, is there a specific position group that you have in mind already?
Yeah, I mean, D-line and linebacker are the 2 that I'm debating the most. Obviously, like I said, the 3 defensive ends, Eddie, I think it allows for some sort of exiting and new blood. Linebacker Jermaine Pratt is a free agent. I'll be curious what the Zaire Franklin thing turns out to be. But I'm also looking at linebacker and thinking, who's in the pipeline?
Mm-hmm.
The Jalen Carlisle thing is quite a mystery, I would say, heading into year 3. But, they've invested a lot in this defense. I mean, they've drafted more defensive players than offensive easily in the Ballard era. I want to say it was a top 10 highest paid defense in the league this year. I kind of look at it like this, Eddie, and stop me if you would disagree. Guys that aren't going anywhere defensively.
Yeah.
Sauce Gardner, Leatu Latu,
Both 25.
Cam Bynum.
He is also 25.
And I think I'm done. I guess Justin Wally.
Jalen Jones?
I don't think that's a slam dunk.
I don't either.
I mean, core guys, like core starters for you moving forward. Sauce, Latu, Bynum. And then, Buckner and Stewart, I assume they're back, but like.
Stewart's 32, right?
31 and 32, I believe, for those two. Obviously, they carry big cap hits. But again, you can only do so much without the first round pick,
Yeah.
So I that's where I do kind of look at it and think to myself, all right, where else can they address? The instant impact with the draft. I mean, you're banking on a lot. It took time for a guy like Nick Cross. Hell, Latu wasn't much as a rookie, even though he had the resume that he did. And, Lou has been a little hesitant, I think, to play some younger guys. I agreed with Ballard wholeheartedly when he mentioned like the 2-minute, the Russian cover. Like, did you watch, I don't know, did you watch in that Carolina Rams playoff game?
We were driving back from Georgia, so no. We were listening to it on the radio, though.
The final drive, the Rams 4-man rush just wrecked it. Just absolutely wrecked it. Got Bryce Young out of the pocket, hit him. And again, I'm not going to put Houston, Houston's in a different stratosphere, but like that Rams front is not some, star-studded group. Obviously Verse, the Colts could have drafted him. We've gone over this before.
And the conductor.
Yeah, and like to watch them kind of finish the game and win it there, close the door, slam it shut emphatically, that's what I think is so missing from the Colts. So
talking about Kobe Turner.
When you look at it, Eddie, I just don't. How it looks different, I think, is where I'm met with a little bit of pause.
Like to compare, like the Rams, for example, and the Colts, just from what I've watched this year with the Rams, it seems like Braden Fisk, Poona Ford, Kobe Turner, Byron Young, Nate Landman, all these guys, Jared Verse, all these guys have like incredibly high motors. And when I look at the Colts, I don't see anyone with an incredibly high motor besides Latu for the most part.
Yeah, I don't know if it's as much motor if it is. I just don't know if the Colts got enough dudes.
That too.
Just individual guys that can win early in plays. And again, they've drafted obviously richly high. So I come back to this now, and we'll get into this more as free agency gets here. Okay, how do you go about it? You don't have your first round pick. I assume a decent amount of the draft capital, if you're trying to get younger, will go to the defensive side of the ball. Again, how early can those guys impact? And then free agency wise, you're north of $50 million. But again, Jones and Pierce are going to get so much of that. How much can you open up then to spend? Are we looking at a new starting defensive end opposite Latu? I would assume. Are you then looking at a different starting linebacker? I would assume. Is that kind of where you stop, though? Like, are you looking at it and saying, hey, go out and get a free agent end, draft a linebacker in round 2, draft a defensive tackle in round 3 because you're a little bit older there, and I don't know, maybe find some depth at safety? Is corner popping up as a need if Travaris Ward decides to retire? That I could probably get talked into being a little bit of a need too. So again, that appears to be the biggest roster focus. Two of the more in the abstract, or I guess less tangible areas, Eddie. He pointed to the late season collapses. Mm-hmm. Again, I feel like the question, do you feel like it's a little bit more cultural? Spans multiple coaching staffs. You could make a case they have collapsed in some form or fashion in 4 out of the last 5 years when they've missed the playoffs, maybe even all 5. That I think is a question that he didn't really have an answer for. And then the other thing that he mentioned, which is maybe the biggest statistical difference from the first 2 months to the last 2 months of the season is that run game. Ballard said we have to run it when we want to run it. And if you just literally looked at Jonathan Taylor's yards per carry, it will blow your mind how effective he was in the wins and how ineffective he was in the losses, particularly the first 2 months to the last 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
And, you go back that 21 season with Carson Wentz at quarterback, and they ran it extraordinarily well with obviously a limited quarterback. So it's not like it's unforeseen that, whatever, a struggling quarterback, obviously it can hinder you to a degree, but it just can't be, the end-all, be-all. Mutual love for Daniel Jones. He used the phrase long-term, which, again, when you make the trade for Sauce Gardner, I think that told you everything you needed to know. He did say something about building without a first-round pick, how they have had success there before. I would say I actually looked it up. I'd say one of the 3 times they've operated without a first-round pick, they've had success. I would say that definitely that 2020 draft. Pittman and Taylor right there in the second round. Now, again, there you're drafting 34 and 41. I mean, I think you're more middle of round 2 here coming up this year. That 19 draft, Rock Yassin, Ben Banogu, Paris Campbell, I wouldn't say that. 2022, Pierce got there. Ryman got there. But again, given the nature of where you're at right now, the higher sense of urgency, Eddie, if these guys want to save their job, they need impact right away.
Yep.
And that draft class is a great example of it. Pierce, Jelani Woods, Bernard Ryman, Nick Cross. It's turned out to be, I think, a pretty good class when you look at Pierce, Ryman, and Cross. But none of those guys really positively impacted you in 2022 in that initial rookie season.
Right.
So, again, how much more can they add? Can they trade Richardson for a pick? All those things. I again didn't get great vibes on Richardson coming back. That $10.8 million cap hit, I think you can't forget either. He's making about 10 times the money Riley Leonard is next year. So, when you factor that in, you factor in the injury, you factor in he's been benched twice. I just don't know if it has always added up. He was spot on. He has always been a big Pierce guy. He has loved Pierce. I think he liked Pierce even more than some of those other 2022 wideouts. I think that's one of Ballard's better bets and beliefs. And he sounded probably more optimistic on Buckner returning than Mooney. That's pretty much everything Ballard. Anything else from you?
Yeah, there was one quote I wanted to pull up real quick. So keep chatting on whatever while I find that. I'm looking at the transcripts.
Yeah. Staff changes wise, he mentioned doesn't really expect anything there. Outside of the Lou Anarumo domino.
Yeah, that surprised me a little bit, Kev. Like you have this epic collapse once again, and you make no staff changes. Like in order for changes to be made, you would think there would be some sort of changes on the staff, right?
Well, again, this kind of gets back more to the Carly conversation from last week, Eddie. They are largely banking on the football gods rewarding them. Great bill of health. The first 2 months of the season, that was a reeler. They're banking on that versus we need to make substantial changes. Unless they do a ton defensively than what it looks like on paper right now, they are able to do or will do. I just don't foresee wholesale changes. So that would be the question that I would have. He did not entertain the question about veteran players and parting ways with them still under contract. That, to me, I think is the biggest unknown carrot of the offseason that, again, could lead to some notable change.
I can't find the direct word for word, but I remember Ballard mentioning in the presser that they'll be fine in terms of the cap space and what they're going to do. Like, to me, that kind of screams out like, hey, we should be looking out for Michael Pittman Jr.'s future.
Right. I would agree on that.
Just because he's the easiest guy to point at that gives him a lot of cap space by releasing him. And as we've noted last week, if you cut Michael Pittman Jr., you open up $24 million in cap space because he only has a dead cap of $5 million.
Right. Now, wideout now becomes a definite need.
Right.
I think we also have to acknowledge that. But no, I can definitely hear you out on it.
Could it be a situation where, they let him go and then just bring him back on a cheaper deal?
Yeah. Could you do something from a restructuring standpoint that allows that? I think that's almost a must, frankly. But again, guys like Kenny Moore, I don't think anyone is safe. I mean, hell, Jonathan Taylor. How many teams are handing out 3 contracts to a running back? And, do you believe that the old 300 carry mark is ever going to get to Taylor? Or do you just think he's more in the Derrick Henry, area there? And, also I think you're going to have some good early season support for whoever's playing quarterback, even if it's Daniel Jones coming off the torn Achilles there. So, those are all questions. But yeah, when I heard that aspect to it, Eddie, I'm like, okay, right now I think their cap space is like $52 million. Let's say Alec Pierce gets the franchise tag. That's $28 million. So now you're down to 24. $24 million for Daniel Jones? That ain't going to be happening.
Right.
So even to get to Daniel Jones, you almost have to have, a little bit more from a cap space standpoint there.
So I look at over the cap, and they've got the Colts around $34 million right now.
Oh, I thought Spot Track had him north of 50.
I'd have to look at what they say about over the cap. Had him at like 34.
Anything else, Ballard, or should we get to the old Twitter sphere?
Let's get to Twitter questions. We've got 5 of them, starting with Skoog. Real podcast question: did you, Kevin Bowen, honestly think there would actually be changes this season?
Always great to hear from Skoog, one of the better pulling guards, frankly, the 317 has ever seen. A true controller of the line of scrimmage there. So appreciate the question. Carly was the pause for me. Again, I didn't think there would be changes, but that was the pause and the unknown. Now, I'll go back to what I said earlier, Eddie. I feel like the Irsay's like the Ballard, likes Ballard even more.
Yeah.
And are they just simply letting this contract play out? I don't know, but I think there is some real offended, because with Jim Irsay, I always came back to that quote, Eddie, the opening press conference. We feel like it's the greatest GM hire of the 21st century. Mm-hmm. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, but I think that's pretty darn to a direct quote of what he said. I always felt like Jim might have been holding on to that. But, if you get somebody new there, do they have the less emotional pull? But I don't know, man. It's probably a reminder to all of us of like, hey, as much of a bottom line business as it is, if you get along with people, that also can go a long way. Right?
Yeah.
Tell that to Ryan Grigson. And to be fair, let me just interject right here. Ryan Grigson had one of the worst 2013, 2014, 2015 draft cycles you'll ever see.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But his teams also won, and I get people will say, well, yeah, he had Andrew Luck. He also went 6-4 without Andrew Luck. So
I forget who said that. Like, if you're a nice guy and like you come in, you do your work, and respectful to everyone, and you're not an a-hole or a jerk in the locker room, like you can hang around, and no matter what the league is, NBA, NFL, for 10 years at least.
Well, some teams more than others.
Yeah,
and I would say the Colts side on that.
Yeah. Jamie's next. Jim Aiello was on James Boyd's podcast, indicating Alec Pierce is not a $28 million wideout, and if you tag him, that becomes the price. What are your thoughts?
I mean, if you want to get, I guess, uber technical, I maybe he's a top. What is that? That's probably top 10 wideout money, $28 million. But again, he has that trait, and it's the hardest trait to find in a wideout. The NFL league, Eddie, has gone to this where defenses are doing everything and anything they can not to allow big plays.
Yeah. Everything. Too high.
Everything. And yet Pierce has been a consistent playmaker in that area. So I can't be super nitpicky here. And again, if you're restructuring Pitt or you're moving on, I would say Pierce becomes even more important.
Right.
So I just think when you traded A.D. Mitchell, it created more leverage, frankly, for Pierce, and I guess a little bit of Pittman as well. And then obviously, Pittman Pierce did a wonderful job here in this contract year, but I can't nitpick at that number. I get it's a big number. I understand that, but you just don't have an embarrassment of riches at that position, and you don't have a first round pick. and the franchise tag's a tool. So you got to use it.
Would you trade for AJ Brown?
I don't know, man. Some of that Brown stuff was just wild. Part of me thought Sirianni should have grabbed him before the 4th down and said, dude, I'm so done with you. Go make a play right here and tell me I'm an idiot. And then just have Jalen Hurts just force the ball to AJ Brown one final time. Better than triple coverage Dallas Goedert, right?
Right.
I don't know. I'd have to look a little bit more into that. So you're trading what? Some sort of day 2 pick?
I'm not sure. But, I mean, it's something to entertain. Like, I was just spitballing it out there. If the rumors are true that he could be available and he'd be a cheaper alternative to Michael Pittman Jr.
Right.
He is also 29.
You're
just
trying
like
to
Pitt.
get younger and faster on defense. And if you're trading a day 2 pick now, are all your eggs in what? One top 120 pick? I don't know.
Yeah. Something to throw out there. Walter would like to know, I'm not going to sit around and cry about Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen, even though I believe Chris should definitely be gone. But what about Lou Anarumo? Even with injury, Shane was able to get a pulse out of the offense. Colts defense has consistently let them down when the Colts play good teams. Why not pursue Raheem Morris from the Falcons for defensive coordinator?
Yeah, I think we've gotten a couple Lou questions, Eddie. I think it's a little bit more personnel based than anything on defense.
Yeah.
I don't know if I love changing a system for 3 straight years. Just seems like a lot. So I understand the Raheem Morrises, Brian Flores of the world, some of these guys that are available, but I largely think it's personnel. Like, Eddie, how many of these guys have gone on elsewhere and done anything? Some of these defensive draft picks that the Colts have drafted, like, is Malik Hooker the only one? Quincy Wilson, Terrell Basham, Ben Banigou, Kamoko Ture, Rock Yassin. I mean, I'm sure there's more I could go to. I mean, I don't think Dayo Adengbo did a ton with the Bears this year. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Didn't he get hurt?
Did he get hurt?
I thought so.
I thought he was relatively healthy for him there for the first at least half plus of the season. But, yeah, I just – and, again, part of it is probably you've drafted some injured guys. I mean, Dio from a torn Achilles standpoint.
Yeah, he tore his Achilles again.
Again this year?
Yeah.
Did he play? He played a couple months, didn't he? I could have sworn I saw him out there.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken,
He
I remember
played in 8 games, had 1 sack.
I was going to say, I remember looking it up. He had played a decent amount and hadn't really done much. So, yeah, I mean, you just look at this draft history on defense, and there's just not a lot of guys that are doing things elsewhere. Jerry Hughes of the world, where he went elsewhere and did something. And I think that, to me, is an indicator of you are missing a lot of, again, just strictly personnel.
How much of it is also Ballard trying to take, the chance on guys who have had injuries, looking for them to bounce back?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that. And that kind of goes back to the presser, Eddie, of like...
There's Dio. I mean, obviously Latu.
Yeah. What is it? Was it Blackman that tore his ACL his final year?
Yes.
Utah, I think it was.
Yeah.
When you look at Daniel Jones specifically, Ballard's like, oh, the track record on Achilles is good. I'm like, well, I mean, the track record at West 56th Street is not very good. And I'll repeat this until September about Jones. To me, there are 2 very big and different questions with Daniel Jones heading into next season. One is, when does he play? 2, when does he look like himself?
Right.
Those are 2 very different questions in my mind. And I think this season you saw that. Just because he was out there against Kansas City and Houston and Jacksonville doesn't mean he was effective.
Right.
Or at least at the level that you needed him to be at is probably the better way to put it.
If you were in the position of Chris or Shane, would you consider, or let's say you're Chris, would you recommend hey, I think we should get an offensive coordinator, take the load off your plate, go with that CEO approach like you talk about. Let's go get Mike McDaniel. Your thoughts?
No, because then I'm saying, why is Shane even the head coach? I think Shane is the head coach because of what he does offensively.
Well, isn't that the same thing that what Philly would say? They hired Nick Sirianni to be the offensive coordinator and a play caller, and
Yeah,
then
but
he gave it
Sirianni
up.
had never called plays. Steichen had success. I think it's a little different. I think Sirianni is more of the leader of the men than Steichen.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for the most part, Sirianni's done a nice job controlling all that chaos. I think that's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
First off, the Philly market, and then that locker room. And I mean, hell, I know this year they obviously bowed out early, but they've had great success. Besides that, and they've won the NFC East and 11 wins, et cetera, et cetera. So I understand where you're coming from, but like to me, I have more of questions about Steichen as a head coach, and honestly, the play calling and the offensive leader, I have little questions about.
Yeah. Austin, would love to get your thoughts on any insight as to why all of Colts management is always late to press conferences, and if this is a bad reflection on the organization. I will note, Chris Ballard was not late.
No, he was not. And you know who is also always on time, if not early, is Shane Steichen.
Mm-hmm.
That man is always on time. Carly Gordon, I think Austin is referencing here. She was about 30 minutes late to hers. I mean, who am I to like insert like parental guidelines here of like, okay, the core beliefs of the Bowen household are 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Punctuality.
Yes. Let's just say Maddie Bowen operates on much more of the Ursay family clock. I operate a little bit more on the Steichen family clock.
I feel like that's normal.
Yeah. No, not
By the way, how's Nelly?
the stereotype. She's great. She's great. Yeah. Enjoyed watching the end of that Pacer win last night while giving her a little dream feed bottle at about 10 o'clock. What a quick game, Eddie. 7 fouls apiece.
I know. Fewest fouls in a game in franchise history for both of those squads.
Wild. And a big no call late, and Joe Mazzulla with one of the funnier post-game press conferences you will see.
Illegal screen.
Yes, and if you missed Rick Carlisle's reaction to that, check that out on our podcast page. I did throw it his way this morning when he joined us.
Our podcast page being the Fan Morning Show.
Yes,
not
sorry.
this podcast page.
Correct. Yes, multiple podcast pages here. The other thing that I thought was, I guess, a little bit interesting just in general about this is not like, I guess if you want to, I should answer Austin's question. Do I think you should be on time? Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to like rip anybody for being late. I mean, hell, I'm picturing a Jim Irsay press conference that I swear like was 2 or 3 hours late one time. But like there is a part of me just as I do think being on time is important. I do think that's a nice quality to have in an individual, and I get that bleep plop pops up at times, and who knows, maybe they were closing on the Irsay family lake house up there in Culver. But I guess in general with Carly Irsay Gordon now, Eddie, as we're what are we, 6 months into her kind of watch, if you will.
Sure.
Again, there's probably 2 items I'm a little bit like. I think the general Carly Irsay Gordon immersing herself into so much of the organization, I think is really healthy, and kudos to her for wanting to do that, doing it in unique ways, even if optically some people might question that. Who cares? If you find answers to questions, I think that's all that matters. There are probably 2 items that I point to right now exiting this kind of first year, if you want to call it that I do have pause on. One is going back to the Sauce Gardner trade. And Eddie, we'll probably do a podcast here in a few weeks, maybe more on the Gardner trade as a whole and examining all of it now a few months later. But did she fully look into all the tentacles of that trade?
Right.
Or was it a little bit too much on we have struggled at corner for years, here's a 25-year-old former All-Pro on a reasonable contract? Or were the other tentacles truly explored? And by that, I mean not just Daniel Jones for 1 year, Daniel Jones for long term. That's what that trade meant.
Yeah.
And it meant Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard weren't going anywhere.
Right.
Were those fully explored? Because there's just certain aisles that you can't shop down, whether you want to or not. You just can't shop down that aisle. I'm sorry, Max Bowen, you're not getting the king-size candy bar. That ain't how we're working, brother.
Takes after his father.
We hope there's a free sticker at the checkout. That's what we're going with today. That's just reality of the situation. And then the other one would be, again, and I don't want to make too much of the anecdote that Ballard shared about her question to him, but man, is that really the top question? you're more curious about the person's energy and drive than you are their resume, the lack of substance on it. Yeah, that would be the other one.
Yeah. Last question.
Are you on time? Are you a prompt individual?
Yes. Yeah. I'm always prompt. I'm always 5 minutes early because I was always told if you're on time, you're late.
Look at that. Who are you? Jim Fossil? Tom Coughlin with that?
The last Twitter question on today's pod is from Isaac. Realistically, how close are the Colts? They lost 7 straight games in 9 games total, but 7 of those were 1-score games. Even if the Colts were close, can we sell the fans on that idea? The franchise has claimed we are on the verge of competing with the heavyweights for the last 7 years. The fan base is tired of hearing it.
Well, they certainly are, and very understandably so, Isaac. I don't know. The close word is always one that's like, man, how do you view it?
I mean, it is fact. They won 6 games, or 6 of their 8 wins this year came against teams that are currently looking for a head coach and or GM.
Right. I think 6 purely looking for a head coach, right?
Right.
I believe it's just Chargers and Broncos, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, look at the AFC as a whole, Eddie. Okay? You have quarterbacks that are not in the Final Four. Mahomes, Burrow, Lamar, Herbert, Lawrence. 5 decent quarterbacks. 5 good quarterbacks.
Yep.
And I'm not even including how you view Pittsburgh and their situation. So, that would be something that would, whatever, you have questions about. And, is Cam Ward going to hit? Is Fernando Mendoza going to hit?
Mm-hmm.
We've seen Drake May, Bo Nix, we've seen others, rise into this next crop. Will there be instant or young impact from any of those quarterbacks? That would be a question I would have as well. So, the whole close thing, offensively, don't expect many changes. Defensively, how quickly do those changes impact and how many will there be? So, yeah, I'm not one that, I don't think I will, I occasionally hear this from some people internally and externally. Oh, man, just a few plays could have made the difference. And I'm just met with, and I've said this to people inside the building, I'm like, 5 games behind the AFC South champions. 3 games behind the nearest wild card. And that was with the Chargers throwing in the towel week 18. So I don't know if I can just say this, literally in 2023, Eddie, they were right there, 20 yards away from literally winning the AFC South. I don't think I can sit there in 2025 and just say, boy, you get that stop in Seattle and it's different. Or whatever. Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy don't make those plays in Kansas City and it's different. I don't know if I can play that game, to be honest with you.
How about this? Only 3 teams between the AFC and the NFC, their starting quarterback was either drafted on said team or in the National Football League before Andrew Luck's retirement.
Yeah. I mean, you can summarize the Ballard era in a lot, Eddie. And DeForest Buckner has been a very, very quality player. But I would argue the biggest issue in not getting the train fully back on the tracks was the attempt to continue to Band-Aid quarterback.
Yep. Can you name the 4? Pretty easy.
4 quarterbacks that were, give it to me again, in the league before Luck retired?
Yes.
That are left?
Mm-hmm. In general, of the 16 playoff teams.
Got it. Allen, Stafford, Rodgers, and Darnold?
Yep.
Wow. Samuel Darnold. Unbelievable. What a time. I think I'm cheering for the Bills.
And Allen was drafted in 2018, so the year prior.
Allen and Darnold, right?
Yes.
Same draft.
Yeah, that's right.
I am cheering for the Bills. I want the Bills. I want them to win.
Let's go Bills, right?
I like their
Bills
families.
Mafia.
Let's go Mafia. Maybe a financial stake, but also let's go Mafia. He's Eddie Garrison. I'm Kevin Bowen. Everybody have a great week. Again, DM us if you got some Twitter questions. We'll be back next week.